The first step in sectioning and carving beef is to divide the beast down the centre. This can be carried out with the aid of a chainsaw. A good practice is to hang the meat for 3 or 4 days as it will tenderise and mature. Then divide each side into half at the 7th rib to obtain more manageable sections. The method used to carve beef can directly influence its eating qualities. Beef correctly carved adds culinary appeal and appearance to the finished product. It's essential that the right tools be used and that they are correctly sharpened. You will require a steak knife or any large bladed carving knife, a boning knife with a blade 150 to 200 millimetres long. This thin bladed knife will be more manoeuvrable and able to follow the bone contours. A good quality steel, approximately 40 centimetres long, is also essential. A good length meat saw with coarse teeth is required. A normal handsaw could be used as an alternative, plus a meat cleaver. This sectional diagram shows the various meat cuts and their location. Use this diagram for reference. The first section to be removed is the flank skirt. To commence carving, look for the natural seam. This seam indicates the line taken for the removal of the skirt. This seam is followed carefully, care taken not to cut into the meat. The indentation line at the end of the rump is an indication of where the loin begins and the rump ends. The length of the T-bones required determines the depth of incision along this indentation line. This is approximately 20 centimetres. Having found the indentation line, cut parallel to the backbone using the knife and finishing with the handsaw. Separate the loin and rump from the upper leg by cutting through approximately 20 millimetres below the pelvic bone. Use the handsaw to cut through the bone. Here clearly is the indentation line which marks the separation point of the loin and rump. Cut through with the knife and finish with the handsaw. The first step in removing the various cuts of meat from the hind leg is to identify where natural divisions occur. These can be seen as seams. The seam can be clearly seen between these two muscle sections. Start at the top and cut downwards. The opening incision will reveal 2 seams, one shallow and a deeper seam. Following the deeper seam, cut through the shallow seam which is encountered at this point. Keep downwards pressure on the free hand and follow through to the bone. Use small cuts with the knife, taking care to follow natural divisions. When you get to the bone, don't try and cut further. A small hole at the top will make it easier to pull down. Follow through to the bone and cut the sinew around the cup joint. Keep pulling down. A sharp jerk will release the last of the meat from the bone. This piece is topside, and its carving and cooking properties will be described later. The next cut to be removed is round steak. Once again, look for the dividing seams. An incision is made into the seam. It's a small incision, enabling you to feel with your finger the dividing seams. Run your finger down the seam and mark with the knife. Follow the seam to the knuckle bone. Using the free hand, open the knuckle and release the gristle with the knife. Cut a hand grip so as to ensure a firm grip. Then follow the bone until you have cleaned the flesh away from the bone. At all times, keep pressure on the free hand, using the knife as you go. Pressure on the free hand contributes as much as the working hand. This cut is round steak. The last piece remaining is silver side. To remove the silver side, cut 3 inches below where the tendon finishes, making sure you have enough meat to support the hook so the hook doesn't pull through. Cut in until you hit the new muscle tissue. Then bone out the last of the silver side. At this stage, it becomes apparent why you need a narrow-edged knife. Keep following the bone down with the knife, the object to remove it in one solid piece. As can be seen, sufficient meat has been left around the tendon so that it can support the weight that was on the original leg. The movement of this knuckle indicates the point to insert the knife. Let the knife find its own way around the knuckle. As you can see, this is the movement required to open the knuckle. Turn the leg over so that the bone is pointing up. This will enable you to remove the remaining meat from the bone. You can feel the top of the bone. Remove the flesh or the gravy beef on the side of the bone. To lay the gravy beef open, cut alongside the bone. It is important not to cut deeper than the depth of bone or the meat will not lay back. Cut down the other side of the bone so as to remove all the gravy beef in one piece. Because of the difficulty of displaying various cuts for the camera, At times, the butcher was forced to adopt positions that were not appropriate for safe butchering. It is dangerous to cut towards the hand. The meat left is gravy beef. To correctly section the gravy beef, cut it into small pieces. Remove the excess fat. And then remove the gristle from both ends. Cut along the grain of the gravy beef and then cross-cut it. This piece of silver side will require trimming. First, remove the fat, using the free hand to pull it off. After trimming the silver side, use your thumbs to separate and identify muscle tissue, which can be seen here. Once you have identified the two muscle tissue sections, remove them with your knife. This muscle tissue can be used in mince meat. Trim the excess fat from between the two sections, making sure you cut out the gland. This is dressed silver side. It is suggested that it be cut to size and can be roasted, braised or stewed, or it can also be corned. The size of cut is dependent on family individual requirements. The piece remaining requires trimming for fat and can then be used for gravy beef or mince. It's necessary to remove only the waste meat and fat from this cut. This is round steak. It can be cut into individual slices if so required. Thickness is personal preference. Next we have the top side. This has a large pelvic bone running through the middle. Take the boning knife and remove the fat and the meat from the top side of the pelvic bone. Then bone along the opposite side of the pelvic bone, being careful that you don't cut too deeply, making small cuts as you go. Take the meat cleaver and flatten the excess fat that's on the roast. Keep hammering and flatten it all over the roast. Once again, trim off the excess fat. Don't trim off too much fat because the roast will become dry. To remove traces of gristle left on the upper side, push your boning knife under the gristle and cut them off. Using your finger, feel the gristle underneath the meat. Hook your knife underneath and remove it in one piece. Then remove all the excess material and trim it to an acceptable shape. That's a solid piece of topside. You can cut it down the centre or into quarters depending once again on the size of the piece you wish to cook. You can also cut this into steaks. This can be pot roasted, roasted or braised. It's imperative to keep the edge on the knife by occasionally steeling the knife. The next section to bone out is the loin, which consists of the T-bone and porterhouse cuts. For this purpose of demonstration, only 4 T-bone steaks are cut. Cut them through to the bone with the knife, then remove them with the handsaw or bandsaw. Thickness is a personal preference. Half the loin consists of T-bones, the other half porterhouse. Separate the two, then bone out the porterhouse. Remove the meat from these rib bones. The meat is removed from the rib bones by using small cuts. Cut down along the back of the bone, pulling back with the free hand at all times. Keeping in against the bone, ensuring removal of as much meat as possible. The method used to remove the porterhouse cut is to cut down and across. With the meat removed, you can see how it has been cut down . There's a lot of meat in the rib bones after removing the porterhouse. Remove this and this can go into mince steak. Then proceed to slice the porterhouse to the thickness required. Porterhouse steak can be sliced and grilled or roasted whole. The next cut is the rump. Commence by removing the bone from the rump. Cut down along the bone, making small cuts until you recognise where the bone is. If you look hard, you'll see another seam or another layer of muscle tissue. Don't cut through this layer. Come back and remove the fillet from the bone. This meat section being removed is the fillet. Don't remove the fillet at this stage, as its weight helps pull the meat back from the bone. Keep working the boning knife until you have removed the pelvic bone. For safety's sake, work in a comfortable position. Because of the need for good photography, the butcher at times adopted abnormal positions. This meat section is the fillet. Once you have removed the pelvic bone, then remove the fillet, which is considered the choicest cut of beef. Prepare the fillet by trimming and removing excess fat. Slice the fillet into small slices. Fillet can be roasted, grilled or fried. Returning to the rump section, if you look closely, you will see two different sections of meat divided by seams. With the boning knife, remove them from the rump, but because these cuts are less desirable compared with rump steak, these cuts can also be fried, grilled or used in mince. Once again, trim off all excess fat and gristle. The rump is then turned over. Upon inspection, you will see a layer of fat. This will need to be removed. Then slice your rump into steaks. Most of the first slice of rump will require heavy trimming to remove the gristle and waste meat. Here, clearly seen are the gristly pieces that are removed from the first cut of rump. Meat that is trimmed from the first slice will make mincemeat. The remaining portion is choice rump steak. The rump can then be cut into steaks, once again determined by the thickness required. The rump in a piece can be roasted or grilled or fried. Continue to steel the knife and keep it as sharp as possible. This section of beef is the skirt or flank. This will require extra work, as you can see there is a skin over the top of the meat, and it will have to be peeled back and will require the help of the free hand. Once again, skin the whole of the skirt, pulling it back with the free hand. This particular cut is labour intensive and time consuming. Remove the meat from the skirt and trim. Roll the skirt into neat pieces. Skirt in the piece can be grilled, stuffed, rolled and roasted in the piece, or diced, braised and used in a stew. Turn over what is left of the skirt. You will notice a bar of red meat, better known as the bark. This bar can be taken back and cut into strips. This is secondary meat and can be still used in mince steak. The rib section is removed. The remaining meat from the skirt is cut into slices and used for mince meat. Bone out and remove the remaining meat from the ribs. If the skirt is correctly boned out and meat removed, there is a minimum of wastage. Finish boning this part of the rib section, and that completes the hind quarter. Once again, it is important to be aware of the different cuts of meat on the forequarter. When sectioning the forequarter, assess the overall bulk of the carcass. Find the approximate centre line and cut parallel to the brisket. When cutting the centre line, don't cut through to the bone, as this will blunt the knife. Then, using the handsaw, cut to the foreleg. Take care not to proceed past this point. Turn the forequarter and cut the remaining rib bones. When using the saw, ensure the hand is kept low so as not to damage the meat behind the rib cage. Use small cuts with the knife, cutting until you reach the new muscle tissue. Turn the brisket back over, using the weight of the brisket to help pull the meat away from the leg. Then remove the remaining section. This section will be carved up later. The next step is to count up 3 ribs and mark with the knife. Measure and square the rib section. Keep this section square as it will be used as a cover for the rolled rib. There will be less trimming if this section is kept square. At this stage, the shoulder blade is encountered. Use the handsaw to cut through the bone, but no further. Pulling down with the free hand, use the knife to remove the leg section. Short, careful strokes with the knife will ensure you only cut the seam section. At this point, make an incision in the shoulder area to obtain a firm grip. Then pull down and remove the shoulder section with the knife. Cut down along the seam. What remains is the chuck and rolled rib. The next step is to remove the chuck. Cut through the bone, once again using the hand saw. Continue to bone out the chuck. When boning out along the ribs, don't cut too deep. Remove the chuck bone in the following manner. Bone down along the top side of the chuck bone, but not too deeply. Observe the joint in these bones. To remove the ribs, this whole section must be removed intact. Using the free hand, push down and allow the knife to separate the vertebrae. Keep down pressure on the free hand to bring the bone out, making it easier to remove. Take the neck end, cut the gristle between the bone and pull down to remove the bone. Turn over and remove the chuck bone. Keep pulling with the free hand, with the knife gently touching the bone. This bone is very soft, and excess pressure will result in particles of bone being left on the meat. The chuck bone can be used in soup. Trim and remove the surface bone. Also, the large gristle, better known as the paddywhack. The remaining portion of meat is divided by a fat seam which runs down the centre. Use the steak knife to follow this seam and divide into two sections. Notice the butcher has adopted a good camera position rather than a safe position. This section can be trimmed and used for mince steak. Turn the chuck section over and cut into slices approximately 20 millimetres thick. Chuck steak can be stewed, braised or roasted in a piece. The next step is to bone out the foreleg. Once again, trim off the excess fat. The meat left is mince. This is the line of the leg bone. The next step is to remove the gravy beef. Lay the meat open. Once again, take care not to cut all the way through the section of meat. Only cut to the depth of bone. This will require the use of the free hand, and care must be taken to avoid cutting toward the hand. Remove as much meat from the bone as possible in one piece. Use the boning knife to relieve the gristle and sinew in the joint. To do this, a firm grip on the knife is essential. With the aid of the chopping block, use the required pressure to break the joint. Then complete boning the gravy beef. Close inspection reveals a seam. Remove the meat from the top of this seam. Using the free hand, keep pulling back. The next step is to bone out the blade bone. Keep trimming back, removing all the meat from the bone. At this point, completely remove the blade roll. Once again, cut through the gristle in the joint. Involve the free hand and remove the blade bone. At all times, a comfortable, safe position is essential. Once again, removing as much meat as possible from the bone. Remove the clod bone. Most beef bones make good soup. Oyster blade, blade steak and gravy beef are the cuts remaining. Remove this section of the gravy beef. Gravy beef can be used for soups and stews. Cut through the centre and remove the last of the gravy beef. Once again, trim the excess fat and steel the knife. The remaining section is blade bone. The shoulder end of the blade reveals a seam. The lower section is oyster blade and this section is blade steak. Cut through and separate. Blade steak can be roasted in a piece or sliced or grilled and fried. Trim the excess fat from the end of the oyster blade. Slice into steak and grill or fry. Using the knife, bone out the set of ribs. This procedure is similar to that used in the removal of the porterhouse cut. Once again, cut down, leaving a minimum amount of meat on the bone. Cut down and out. The meat left between the ribs can be used in mince steak. Note the large gristle or paddywhack, which must be removed. These small bones must be trimmed off, along with excess fat. Upon examination of the rib section, you will see a skin layer. This will be the cover to the rolled rib. Start at the corner and skin down in one piece. Keep skinning and peel back. Then remove the excess fat. The thick part of the cover with its extra meat content will require thinning. To do this, cut the fleshy meat down the centre and lay it back. This is called butterflying the cover. The cover is then rolled up for later use. This cut, known as a Scotch fillet, will be used in the centre of the rolled rib. The next step is to remove the remaining shoulder bone. Stand the remaining shoulder section on its edge and remove the bone. Use care not to cut the bone. Remove the last of the meat from the other side of the bone. Trim the meat. The remaining piece is oyster blade. Trim off the thin end and slice the remaining piece into steak. Trim and square the last of the rib section. The remaining piece is Scotch fillet, which is one of the most popular cuts of beef. It can be roasted in a piece, sliced into steak, or used, as in this case, placed in the centre of a rolled rib. The thin edge of the cover is matched with the fillet end of the roll. This will make a nice even roll. Use skewers to pin the cover on one side of the roll. Use more skewers to pin from the other end of the cover. Keep adjusting the skewers until the cover is wrapped firmly around the Scotch fillet. Use the skewers as levers to lever the cover until you have it neat, tight and even. Use the meat needle and string to tie the rolled rib. Enter the needle at the 7 o'clock position, exiting at the 1 o'clock position. Pull the string to the front, enter this time at 11 o'clock and exit at 5 o'clock, then tie. Tie a slip knot, pull back and tie off. When tying the roll, maintain constant pressure and even spacing on the string, which also adds to its final appearance. The knot used is tied in the following manner. Continue to do this until you have completed sewing the rolled rib. When completed, the rolled rib should be even, with the stitches evenly placed. It's important to leave the roll for 3 to 4 hours before cutting. The remaining section left is the brisket. Remove and trim off the excess meat and fat. Bone out the last of the rib section. Once again, stand this section on its edge and bone down the ribs. Small strokes with the knife will remove most of the meat from the bone. At this point, lay the meat back and remove the underlayers of fat. Meat removed with the fat can be trimmed and minced. The off-cut meat can be used in mincemeat. Continue to remove all excess fat, which will require heavy trimming around the fatty brisket area. Layers of fat can exist under the surface meat. Remove the surface meat and the layers of fat. Leave some fat as it will help to keep the rolled brisket moist when cooked. Turn the brisket over and cut off the fatty brisket, as well as other fatty pieces. The brisket can now be filled with chuck steak or rolled as is. Roll and sew the brisket similar to the rolled rib. This can then be corned and cut to size. Having correctly sectioned and carved the various cuts, you can now enjoy your just reward.